Outrage grows. Left influencer RIPS Carney's bill as excessive, not what we voted for. Canada is facing a major political storm as outrage mounts over Bill C-2, the so-called Strong Borders Act, introduced under Mark Carney's leadership. Originally pitched as a border security measure, the bill has quickly sparked national concern due to its sweeping overreach into citizens' privacy, financial autonomy, and personal freedoms. While the bill claims to tackle issues like money laundering and fentanyl trafficking, its implications stretch far beyond national security and into the private lives of everyday Canadians. Voices from across the political spectrum, including prominent left-wing creators and conservative MPs, are calling it a betrayal of core democratic values. The bill passed its first reading in Parliament and is now advancing despite significant pushback. Under its provisions, authorities would be granted the power to open private mail without a warrant, demand personal information from internet and social media platforms, and criminalize any cash transactions over $10,000. These provisions are not only invasive but fundamentally shift the relationship between citizens and the state. The fact that these powers can be used without prior judicial approval has raised red flags among privacy advocates, civil liberties organizations, and everyday Canadians alike. One of the most controversial elements of Bill C-2 is the ban on large cash transactions. The legislation proposes to criminalize cash payments over $10,000, regardless of the legality of the transaction itself. This could affect a wide range of common activities, like purchasing a used vehicle, paying a contractor, or even paying for a wedding venue. The lack of exemptions or carve-outs for personal and legitimate business dealings is what makes this so alarming. It signals a shift toward heavy-handed government regulation of personal finance, hitting hardest those who still rely on cash for cultural, practical, or privacy-related reasons. Critics are especially concerned that this bill is laying the groundwork for a transition toward a fully cashless society. Mark Carney, a former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, has been a vocal supporter of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. His past work promoting Bitcoin, a UK digital currency, raises concerns that similar ambitions are being baked into Canadian financial policy. The Bank of Canada has already announced that it's exploring a digital version of the Canadian dollar, which it describes as secure and inclusive. But skeptics warn these terms are euphemisms for control over where, when, and how Canadians can spend their own money. Central bank digital currencies are not simply digital equivalents of cash. They are programmable, which means governments or financial institutions could theoretically place conditions on spending. For instance, your ability to buy fuel, travel, or purchase goods could be limited based on carbon credits, financial behavior, or other subjective criteria. This is where Bill C-2 intersects dangerously with the idea of programmable money. Once large cash transactions are outlawed, digital money becomes the only option, and the government holds the keys. Even more troubling is the bill's surveillance dimension. It grants the federal government the power to compel social media companies, internet providers, and online platforms to hand over user data without a court order. The justification is national security and crime prevention, but the reality is that these powers could easily be abused. From dissenting political views to minor online infractions, this opens the door to a digital dragnet. Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner described this fusion of powers as a censorship Voltron, a centralized entity that combines invasive surveillance, financial control, and state censorship in one legislative package. Opposition to the bill is not confined to one side of the political aisle. A number of progressive voices, including influential TikTok creators and left-leaning commentators, have condemned Bill C-2 as authoritarian and anti-democratic. One prominent creator labeled it a Trump appeasement act, accusing the Carney-led government of undermining the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. While the rhetoric might be over the top, the core concerns resonate across ideological lines. This bill empowers the state at the expense of the individual, and that is a line that many Canadians, regardless of political persuasion, do not want to cross. Some have argued that these critiques are alarmist or conspiratorial, but history tells us otherwise. Governments have long used crises, whether related to security, drugs, or money laundering, to justify expanding their powers. The danger lies not just in what Bill C-2 proposes now, but in the precedent it sets. Once authorities have access to our financial transactions, mail, and personal data without oversight, rolling back those powers becomes nearly impossible. As many civil libertarians have warned, the real question is not whether the government will abuse these powers, but whether they can. And Bill C-2 makes that possibility very real. Supporters of the bill insist it's necessary to protect Canadians from organized crime, fentanyl imports, and international money laundering. They frame it as a pragmatic, modern response to growing transnational threats. And while there's no doubt these are serious issues, the problem is the scope and method of the response. Fighting crime shouldn't come at the expense of fundamental freedoms, and safeguarding the border shouldn't mean eroding the privacy and autonomy of millions of innocent people. One particularly disturbing aspect is how this bill criminalizes innocent behavior under the guise of security. There's no room for context, no discretion. If a retiree pays a contractor in cash for home repairs, both parties could be dragged into legal jeopardy. The government's message is clear. They want full visibility and control over how you spend your money. And if you're unwilling to comply with that vision, you risk becoming a suspect, not based on evidence, but on behavior that was legal just yesterday. Even within Parliament, there is hesitance. While some Conservative MPs have criticized the bill's scope, others appear tempted by the tough-on-crime optics it offers. The NDP, interestingly, has come out forcefully against the legislation, highlighting its disproportionate impact on low-income and marginalized Canadians. If the NDP remains firm in its opposition, it could pose a significant challenge to the bill's advancement. This has also led some political analysts to speculate that the bill could ultimately backfire on Carney's leadership ambitions, particularly if grassroots resistance continues to build. Despite the serious nature of the legislation, public awareness remains low. Most Canadians have not yet heard about the details of Bill C-2, and the mainstream media has been slow to cover it with the urgency it deserves. But with growing pushback online and influential voices speaking out, that may be changing. This is a pivotal moment, not just for this legislation, but for the country's democratic future. The choices made now will define the balance between freedom and control in Canada for years to come. This debate is far from over, and the stakes could not be higher. Canadians must decide whether security can justify this level of intrusion, or if it's time to draw a line. With dissent rising from both left and right, the message to the government is clear. This is not what we voted for. Bill C-2 may have started as a border bill, but it has become something far more controversial, a test of Canada's commitment to liberty, democracy, and individual rights in the face of creeping state power.